This is probably the most important red pill thing that any Southeast Asian brothers of mine need to hear. Welcome, it's the Mids Watch, guys. We're on the last of final stretch, the last 30 of these things. This one, it's pretty straightforward. It's a guy who was trying to understand how to do fitness tests, and ultimately we kind of got into the entire at what level does race factor in to all this stuff. So it starts off, just life choice reflector. Since I'm only posting when I'm in trouble, I realize it might seem to be a complete failure to others. Here's my latest successful deflection I thought I'd share with you guys. My wife is in India. We communicate through WhatsApp. I've been reducing the time I talk to her during work, and after months of reinforcing, she doesn't call me during work anymore. She messages me on WhatsApp, but I don't reply during work, and even if I'm free, always while I wait a while until I'm on break until I respond to her. I can see the messages, contents on my watch, so I know it's just chit chat and not something important. If you don't know what we're talking about here, it's actually one of the earlier parts of Dread. The one thing you're supposed to do is start treating your time as valuable and don't just give it away for free. And so for healthy boundaries, a lot of guys, some very simple ones is just stop calling me 7 times a day when I'm at work. So that's what he's doing here. Anyways, he gets messages from other people, and although he doesn't chat long during the work hours, he does respond to them minimally as well because he doesn't want to keep talking. They just want to have somebody to talk about or somebody to talk to, and once they're done, they go away. So WhatsApp, though, it tells you when you were last active, and she starts asking why I was online, but I don't respond to her. I can see that she can see when I'm online, and it bugs me, and it bugs her that I ignore her on purpose. So I just laughed it off without going into any weight of it. Anyways, he kind of rambles a bit more here. This is actually a harder one to get through, guys, so thanks for listening. It's just English is a second language, and a lot of the things just don't make sense, and you have to read it 3 times. Anyways, so they're having back and forth over this, and he kind of ends with, honey, how will your rough guy, and he's like, I didn't say that, it's like rough equivalent, and not want to talk to you. I'm always thinking about you, right? And he's essentially, hey, baby, don't worry about it, I'm thinking about you. He's trying to be cocky funny. Yeah, and the rest of it's just him fuddling through. It really loses a lot in translation. Just think of something cocky funny you would say there, and it's exactly what kind of went there. Awkward, but they always are at first. So the next thing I hear from her is, do you just do this for me or for everybody? And he mocked her question in a little girl's voice and saying, of course it's just for you, stupid girl. And by the end of the call, she was swooning with happiness. I think I handled it well, but if you think I went overboard or did something wrong, please let me know. Since there is no ultimate good to defer to, you have to know what you want so that you can ask yourself the right questions. I'm going to give you the Jack 10 quote on this one first, and then I'll get into some more, standard boilerplate red pill thoughts and my own thoughts at the end of this one. So skip right to it. I don't particularly care to defend this guy because the advice doesn't need to be different. For young men in other cultures, they're essentially dealing with their elders having marriage 1.0 expectations, even though they now live in a Western country, marriage 2.0 world. What does he mean by this? There is a post by Whisper where we talk about what's the difference between marriage 1.0, 2.0, and 3.0, the way it's evolved over years. I believe Athel K has already written about it as well in 2008. With Married Man Sex Life Primer. Just know Marriage 1.0 was Paleolithic. You're a bunch of tribes, longhouse stuff, right? If you want to look at ancient tribes like Iroquois, pre-Roman Empire, that kind of stuff. And then Marriage 1.0, that was Marriage 0.0. Marriage 1.0 is the traditional family unit that you're thinking of now with monogamy. Marriage 2.0 is post-industrial revolution. In other words, all the stuff you think about when you think the talking points from the red pill, the divorce industry, polygamy, all this, it's just a free-for-all, and women are doing great and men are doing horrible and nobody's happy. And the idea with the red pill men is that you have to find out what is your 3.0, what is it you want out of a relationship. So that's what he's talking about there. And then usually when people are from either India or anywhere in Southeast Asia, you get a lot of, they used to call themselves a subreddit Asian masculinity. And they would always come in here talking about how so much lore in this one, man. So much lore. So the standard line that the Asian masculinity, Southeast Asian types have is that their women come to the West and then they sleep with a whole bunch of white guys, like 30, 40, 50, 100, however many it takes to make you feel insecure about it, and then settle down to please their parents by being with this guy who, because of his race, doesn't get any sexual success with the women here. I'm sure you guys know the memes, the hot blondes, the bobs and vagine, you get the deal. And so there's like a resentment brewing that how come she gets to come here, enjoy all of these guys, and then I don't? It's really just incel with melanin. So anyways, anytime when these things come up, guy gives advice, and that's why Jack's like, I'm not going to really defend you. But he goes, to continue here, young men in their cultures have to deal with things like, everybody is accustomed to an honor culture where if your sister's husband hit her, you're expected to march down to his house and beat him up. Women were essentially treated as precious treasures, and they had the equivalent amount of agency, aka none. Now, women have a higher status in society other than valuable property, but young men are still expected to have the same sense of honor and preserve them from harm as much as possible, even at their own expense. Young men and women in these cultures essentially develop a split personality, where they follow one value system with their mostly white friends, and another one at home with their parents and elders. I remember going to a baseball game with my friend, raised Muslim, and his dad asked if he wanted a beer. His friend said, "You keep forgetting we don't drink, man," which puzzled me because we drank all the time. Then I realized he's with his dad, and I had essentially brought his two value systems into conflict. So for many women in these cultures, that value system is very different regarding sexuality. And they are taught by their parents and elders that this is of utmost importance, that they should protect this, 100% virgin stuff. And at no costs, prior to your marriage, let them break their hymen at some point, forever be sullied and disgraced. So their split identity scenario involves dressing conservatively at home and wearing all their sexy and revealing clothing while they're away at college. And that's why our American-born sons of South Asian immigrants get pissed off when their women counterparts start wanting to follow the former value system the second they start dating them. But when their parents pressure them for why he doesn't want to date this very lovely woman from a very good family, he's unable to say, well, because she gave white guys blowjobs and not me, since any discussion of blowjobs before marriage is at conflict with the parents' value system. In general, because dating customs are dramatically different between cultures, nobody can offer those same American-born sons and daughters of South Asian immigrants any useful dating advice. So the young men taught their masculinity should revolve around their career and accumulating financial wealth, because in their culture, a broke man has the same status as a non-virgin woman, and the idea that a physically attractive man with a low financial net worth would be appealing at all is a foreign concept to them. So these young men, who would be considered high status in their home country, are being raised to be literal beta bucks in the US. Meanwhile, young women are taught that their femininity should revolve around looking nice, being pretty, which is what all their mothers will teach them how to apply makeup and jewelry and blah blah blah. And of course, for women, this is actually much more consistent with the US Western value system. Therefore, because men in general expected to initiate courtship, a lack of US-oriented dating advice doesn't affect these young women all that much because, well, there's not really much more in either culture than stand around and look pretty. The South Asian man will ask his dad, how do I talk to girls, and get a blank stare. The South Asian woman does not need to ask her mother, how do I get guys to talk to me, because she's already been given the knowledge from her mom in how to make that happen. Man, this one's a wordy one. You know what, we're just going to skip some stuff here because I don't want to spend 40 minutes just explaining this, because I think a lot of guys should have understand it anyway. Yeah, it's mostly about the friend and his career. Here we go. So we'll end it off. There we go. So at the end of the story, which is the important part, he realized there was no good way to merge my friend's value systems of the two different cultures in his mind, so he picked one, and it wasn't his family's. So he pretty much disowned his family for several years, led a very fulfilling, sexually and otherwise, life for a while. He eventually did get married to a nice woman that was very much not Indian. His parents begrudgingly came to the wedding, and then him and his wife and his two beautiful kids, and that's when the parents conveniently forgot all their previous beef about what had happened 15 years ago. Oh, that part of the story, I guess, is important. So they wanted him to marry a nice Indian woman. It was a saving the best situation. She had done all kinds of sexual things beforehand with all the white friends, and then she got with him and she didn't like that anymore, and he just said no, and he walked away. So he kind of realizes, like, I guess I am kind of justifying the complaints that a lot of the Asian masculinity guys go. So he goes, you know what? We can't do much about this, but continue to yell at them. Stop taking your wife's crap, even though you were asked to think women were unique and beautiful snowflakes that you need to protect from distress at all times, even though they're causing you distress. Which is like, and that's why I don't comment on this guy's post, because clearly there's enough guys here already chiming in on that. So if I understand correctly, he's an immigrant himself, so personally I'd grade him on a curve, unlike the young men born here that whine on the main red pill sub, who mostly just need to shut up, realize that not everything their parents taught them was shitty, and unplugging from the beta buck's position is infinitely easier than simply beta one and bang out enough white girls until they realize that, that was never really their problem. It's an interesting thing. So here's the thing. It's mostly like white guys with him, and there's like a whole back and forth on this, and it's really not important until you get way down. And it turns out one of our flared, really, really good guys, probably one of the best frames out there. I'm not going to say who it is. You'll probably know once you talk about it. There it is. And he kind of listened to it. It's just more Indian guys complaining about, the hot blondes, the white women, the my women, the saving the best, all that stuff. And he goes, you know what? I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. And I'm speaking from personal experience. The more you buy into how race affects you negatively, the more you act accordingly, the more you go around shooting yourself in the foot, trying to justify your own BS about how the reason it's not working, the less you take ownership and the more you're going to suffer. The moment I stopped thinking of myself as being unattractive because of my race, the more attractive I became because of my deeply rooted victim complex. The more I realized that most women weren't rejecting me because of my race, but they were generally just not attracted to me because I was acting like a puss. So one of the main reasons I'm so hard on people who play the race and victim card is because they go so far out of their way trying to justify their BS that they actually believe it has some impact. Whatever impact they have is so limited compared with the garbage mentality they carry around as a consequence of that thought process, they subcommunicate insecurity on so many levels. Now, are these insecurities justified? On some levels, sure. Dealing with culture differences is a real thing, so is racial prejudice and stereotypes that exist in Western women. But the drawback of buying into these differences having an impact means the person completely overemphasizes the significance to an individual's detriment instead of being responsible for his shitty marriage. Now it becomes, Indian and Chinese culture, blah, blah, blah. Human social interaction on a collective scale is incredibly broad. On an interpersonal scale, it becomes a trivial problem. So don't view yourself as a victim of uncontrollable circumstances, and all of a sudden, the body language you portray becomes more and more the way you approach in life and becomes more calculated, more attractive. Also, it should go without saying that people who break stereotypes are always more intriguing and interesting than those who fit into a mold. And he kind of quotes somebody else, and it's like, do I really need to go over the victim stuff? I'm sure if you are an Asian guy or a Southeast Indian guy, you've probably heard the same kind of woe is me excuses before, so just insert whichever one you know there. And he goes, this is the exact type of excuse-laden behavior that pisses me off. At its base, it deflects any personal ownership. And from where you've seen me post, it has nothing to do with race, culture, height, weight, etc. Every single individual is able to hamster any number of excuses. The solution, obviously, is to pick and choose which aspects you embrace and reject. Otherwise, you're relegating yourself to failing. And that's great if you're content with failing, but don't bitch about the consequences. Adapt or perish. It's basic Darwinian evolution. Side note, I've gotten multiple comments from guys about how I don't get their situation because I'm obviously a natural, and this is completely untrue. It took me until my mid-20s to believe that Asian people can be attractive, which in turn caused me to see how many times I failed to take action up to that because of my shitty mentality. So I know the detriment of having a shitty mentality and using it as a crutch to prop up an ego. Oh, wow, he addresses a lot of it. So most of the excuses you're going to hear, everything you've already known. Okay, so he's talking about, a lot of guys are like, oh, it doesn't work this way. We're not the same as white guys. He's like, dude, everything that they're doing can be taught. Just like all the other random men here can be taught. It's up to these guys to decide if they have the fortitude of character to learn and want to put in time and effort. And then more complaining about women are taught to be chaste and men and women are different. He's like, again, wrong. Asian women are picked up. Women in general are picked up. Be a woman, go to environments, get talked to, agree and disagree when somebody makes advances. Asian women are fat shamed pretty heavily, so compared to American ham beasts, they're in pretty good shape. And then the last one here, blah, blah, blah. Again, he's like, though, to summarize, it's a personal choice to break away from the expectations of others in society. It's a hard choice, I get it, but it's on that person to take responsibility for themselves and their happiness. And that's all that's being taught here. That's all that's been documented as a great narrative. Oh, wow. I'm going to see if this one actually works, but, and it's an old Return to King's article about the red pill destroyed my family, and I'm curious where it's going to go. But the truth is, lots of South Asian men are pussies who refuse to step out of line. Perhaps this is because of culture. Ultimately, it doesn't matter why. They are unwilling and will suffer the consequences while bitching about things completely out of their control. F them. So my thoughts on this one, like, I get it. I'm melanin enhanced. I don't know if you guys know this. My grandparents on my mom's side were all expats from America. They arrived here on the railroad. I'll leave it at that. I think you can do the math there. So, and in my town, there wasn't very many colored guys. There was one black family. There was me. And then there was a brand new neighborhood of recent, like, Sikh immigrants. And so, like, most of this stuff got blown out of proportion. I remember this early on. And this is the part that kind of sucks. And if you have anything where you just don't look like the standard person in your thing, you have to make a decision. Like, you can always use race as an excuse for something. Why did I get not called for that job? Why did the girl not like me? Anything. And the worst part is like, you can't know. There's always like a nagging suspicion. And so whether or not there is irrelevant. This is a praxeology. And I'm telling you from personal experience, not nearly as hardcore as this, but to some extent. You have to make a choice that is the last thing you're going to go for as options. Because otherwise what you do is, and it's just like the guy said here, you put yourself into that little crutch and everything you do now surrounds that. And you see a ton of examples as to why that's happening now. And you just have to accept none of this stuff matters. Now, again, personal experience, a lot of those Sikh guys I was being raised with, I will tell you right now, they were slaying so much. And I'm sure there's some kind of like, well, the Sikhs in the southern, yeah, whatever. All I know is I watched these guys, and it was like Canada had their own version of African Americans, and they were Sikhs. Absolutely slayed. So I don't want to hear it. Just because they can own a BMW 3 Series, an Acura Integra, go pick up chicks at the bar, have just as much fun as everybody else, and then settle down in their late 20s with their, and yeah, they still had arranged marriages in my age. But they managed to get themselves a decent notch count where they didn't have to worry about it. So it's kind of one of those things, and I hate that it's a topic, but it is, I mean, it is here. You just have to accept your life really is in your control, even if it does sound a little awkward to say it that way.